Hi guys, welcome to episode number 1 of Coaching the Champion Athlete. My name is Brendan Jones. This is Brendan Jones Performance, and I'm joined here today by the one, the only Brett Bartholomew. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brent.
Perfect, Brett. So tell us a bit about yourself for all those listeners and coaches out there that don't know who you are yet, which I'm very surprised if they don't, and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I'll try to consolidate it just because I think, I've done a lot of podcasts this past year, and if there is anybody that's listened, I don't want to bore them where first 3 minutes are all my background. The important things are, I've worked in the team setting and the private setting as well in the United States, both with collegiate athletics, with professional athletes, with youth athletes, with military, kind of a wide spectrum. I was fortunate to get that kind of dense and diverse experience pretty early on, which just means that I learned a lot of mistakes along the way. And, starting off, I was always most passionate about periodization, program design, agility, just strength, power characteristics. Still love those pieces from the physical standpoint. But eventually I reached a point in my career where I learned that the biggest limiting factor is getting athletes to care about the things that we care about. And thus enhancing the level of engagement that they have, while they're training, while they're doing anything else. So started really studying human behavior, organizational behavior, just how can I get these guys to tune in to everything I need them to do at a higher level? Because I think when you deal with people, that's how you enhance performance outcomes the most. You can write great programs and you need to write great programs, but if they're not bought in all the way, then they're not going to give you the kind of effort you need.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely agree, Brett, and that's an amazing analogy there. And I think this is where it leads into the topic. You've got your book there, Conscious Coaching, and this is that topic that I'm looking at, is coaching that champion athlete. So in your book, do you talk heavily about that? Do you talk heavily about that kind of coach to athlete relationship?
That's the entire book. The entire book is about that, but not it's all you, and it's really important to develop, a warm, caring relationship. We talk about what goes into building trust from a scientific view. So we want to make the book a combination of science and stories. There's 73, 73 references, combination of peer-reviewed journal articles and other texts on the matter. A lot of it, again, coming from psychology, organizational behavior, human behavior, those pieces. So the book is really divided into several different parts. First of which is understanding yourself. How do you better understand and excavate your own communication style, your own coaching style? What elements about your coaching style do you think others, will be able to, best relate to? And what other ones could cause you some trouble down the road? And how did those things come about? And then the other part is simply knowing the athlete, what goes into human nature, what goes into engagement. And then we break it into how to engage them, what kind of persuasion tactics work, what have other coaches in the field do. That's the archetype section that you hear a lot about. We wrote down 15, 16 different athlete archetypes and gave 15 different coaches all across the world, whether it was David Joyce in the AFL, my friend Dave Paloka in the NFL, or a number of other people in different domains, and they talk about how they connected with those athletes as well.
Yeah, no, amazing, mate. And I've purchased that book, actually. It's on its way. So I purchased it from you. So thank you so much for bringing that book to the world. And I really think that it's going to make a lot of difference to coaches everywhere, really. So the first question I'll ask you is, out of all the athletes that you've trained
yeah, my pleasure. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So out of all the athletes that you trained, what makes them successful? What makes them elite? All these champions that you have.
Yeah, aside from genetics, because anybody that tries to downplay that, is out of sync. Aside from genetics, just the level of commitment, engagement, and consistency that they put into it. One of the athletes I've worked with in particular that's probably had the longest and most successful career, depending on how anybody wants to categorize that or really define that, is just there's nothing exciting about him. Just consistent, attacks every training session. It's really, he masters in the basics. And so I think that's something that's really important. I think that's something that's often lost. And again, whenever you're dealing with people, I say it again and again and again in the book, humans are the ultimate performance variable. Right now, data is winning out in everything that we do. But data is just a decision driver, or, one part of the decision-making process. If you don't understand the context around the data and you don't have a shared consciousness with the athlete and you can't, better pick apart the situation, you're wrong. And this stuff isn't new. I mean, this goes back to the old, GE model of how people used to get fired from major companies and how they used to look at, worker performance and all these pieces. You can't do it just off the chart. You had to sit down with somebody and you had to probe for their strengths and their weaknesses. And for some reason, we live in a world now where they think data tells the whole story. And that's just not the case. I mean, look at your search results, right? Let's imagine Google Analytics was sending the FBI or any other intelligence agency your search results, right? Now, 99% of those things are going to be pretty basic, right? If you're interested in performance, you're probably looking up, any number of things that somebody, if they looked hard enough, could be like, oh, he's clearly interested in performance training, coaching, all these pieces. But what about those times where, you're with your friends and you're pulling up something goofy, or you put something else in your search results? It'd be really easy for somebody to say, oh my God, like, why are they looking up that? The other day we were having a conversation, about travel bans and what's going on and why, what countries have the highest risk of security and what they're doing to screen those countries. Somebody easily could have looked at my Google search results and be like, you guy's a terrorist. What is he interested in these things for? The point is data is never going to tell the whole story from a clear-cut standpoint. And that's just a humorous example. But you see it, last year when the Cubs won the World Series for the first time in over 100 years, a big article came out that talked about how their front office focused on the soft skills. It wasn't data analytics driving the way solely. Those things are a part of the puzzle. But when they're treated as the entire part of the puzzle, it's going to be scary. Now, some of your listeners may interpret what I just said as me not believing in data. Nothing could be further than the truth. In the book, we stated again and again and again, data is important, but if you don't understand the surrounding context, you're missing the story. Because humans aren't machines. Humans don't run off of, they're not Toyota Camrys where it's just input and output. There's a whole foggy middle ground there. And so my passion right now, and one thing that I'm actually working on building a course off of that will be released online, is really illuminating the complexity of the art of coaching and showing people that there's a science to it. It can't be used, it can't be figured out with the same kind of reductionist thinking that we use with figuring out mobility or speed, or speed's a little bit of a different beast, but let's say a warm-up. People can use reductionist thinking to say, what should go into my warm-up? How can I compartmentalize every part of the warm-up to make sure that by the end of it, the athlete's ready to go neurologically, right? Physiologically, all these pieces. You can't do that with interacting with people. You can't. You can use schemas and you can use archetypes to kind of get a general idea of how they're going to behave or how they may behave. But whenever you're interacting in a dynamic and chaotic environment, people, they can react in any number of ways. And it can be due to their emotions there that day. It can be due to, did they experience a death in the family? Or any other number of factors. How do they perceive you as a coach? How do they perceive themselves? What's their own self-image? And so when you look at this, trying to predict behavior is very much like trying to predict the weather. You can get a general example of how somebody is going to behave, and that's like the climate. That's the aggregate or average of the weather over time. But day-to-day weather is going to change rapidly, and we've seen that. You go outside, you think it's going to be sunny, and all of a sudden a pop-up thunderstorm hits. Or they say it's going to rain, and it ends up being an amazing day. So coaching is like trying to predict the weather. And so by giving people principles and giving people a framework with the book, it's one step towards helping them figure out how to better navigate these micro-interactive strategies that they're going to experience when they're on the floor.
Yeah, great answer. I'm so interested to read that part of the book and read that in that area, because I do believe that we all have to keep growing as coaches, and we all have to keep, enhancing the way that we train our athletes. We have to really look after them and keep building upon that. Like, I'm an athlete myself, and I compete in the 100 meters and in sprints. And in Australia, if you
look like it.
Yeah, like in Australia, we don't have, a high level of track and field. we don't have like America has. You know, if you look at the last Olympics, we didn't have any Australians that were in that area. And like I'm running 10:90, 11 seconds, and I'm trying to get 1 second faster so I can compete with the big guys. And it's tough. It's continuous. It's long, but it's how bad do you want it? That's how I kind of keep saying to myself is how bad do you want to work and get to that stage? And I'm trying to consciously focus on some mental skills. And
and think about what you just said there, Brandon. You know, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
But think about what you just said there, right? Like, one of the key points we make in the book is purpose is a performance enhancer. You know, and that goes into engagement. You know, if you have a strong purpose to do something, and a bigger reason why, you're going to hit that harder, right? But like right now, all that, whenever you read sports psychology or any of those texts right now, the problem is, and the reason people have gotten turned off to it and called those things soft sciences, is because somebody's used a soundbite like that and then just followed it up with, visualization, you know, positive mindset. The book touches on none of that, because that's not, I mean, yeah, that's a part of those pieces, but like, it's not that tangible. Human behavior is tangible. Human nature is tangible. You know, Antonio Damasio, who's a professor emeritus at USC, Southern California, talks about drives. And drives are very different than motivation and inspiration, they're really not indelible. Drives really permeate from the subconscious part of our brain, the limbic system, and they arise from areas that deal with memory processing, reward processing, fear and anxiety, the amygdala, right? Past experiences, you can see all wrap that in a nice little package. And then they permeate into the conscious parts of our brain, that prefrontal cortex. So really these drives, these things that really come from fear, anxiety, beliefs, past experiences, everything that's just been cooking since that, you know, we were born, and the experiences we've had actually lead into our decision making and behavior. Robert Sapolsky talks about this as well. And so that was the goal of the book, you know, to kind of bridge that gap, so to speak. Now, there'll be critics of the book for sure that say, well, you know, it could have been more into this research, more into that research. All I ever say to that is, you know, write a book, you know, because what you'll find out, and what I found out, is I had about 80 more pages of things coming. And then the editor says, no, stop here. You know, if you don't stop here, the book is not going to be tight and concise. So, you know, there's all these books out there that are great books, but they start to lose their core message because they try to cram everything they can in there. And that was something I learned. I had to stop. And instead of like making one book that, I mean, first of all, I would never be narcissistic enough to think my book has all the answers. There's things I look back now, and that book was just released in March of 2017, that I'm embarrassed by. I would have liked to go back and change, because I've learned so many things since then. But that's why you create an ecosystem, right? So now those things that I wish I would have added, I speak on at clinics and conferences. We're going to add some of those things into the course. We've added more self-development pieces of it into a field guide that's coming out. But I think so often, and hopefully your listeners hear this, because I was this way too, so often we try to take one resource and we build up all these hopes that this is going to be the one resource we need. That shit doesn't exist. Ideas evolve over time, right? What you need to look at is every book and everything you get is one part of the conversation. You would never hope to sit down with a stranger, whether it's a girl you're hoping to date, you know, if you're a guy you're hoping to date, if you're a girl, if you're a young coach, you know, your idol of a coach, and sit down with them for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or even a couple of hours and really think that you could get to know everything there is about that person or situation. So why do we do the same thing with books, right? We look at books and we think this has to have the answer. And if it doesn't, you'll criticize it. And if it does, you'll laud it. Books are a part of the journey. Not one book should seek to help, but the one thing hopefully it does do is help people understand there is a science to the art, and the things that you're talking about that you've experienced, you know, having a strong purpose, having a sense of dedication, having urgency, right? Like just looking at your facial expressions while we talk, I can tell that you're probably a fairly, not high strung in the sense of like nervous or anxious, but high strung in terms of, I can tell you're a guy that you have a goal. And if you don't accomplish that goal in a certain amount of time, it's going to eat you alive one way or another. 100%. And that's good. It should, right? Like we're taught that anxiety and all these things are bad. And I used to be that same way because I'm a pretty anxious guy. No. Time is money, and only the Grim Reaper knows the budget, right? And so you get it's important to have that kind of sense of urgency and anxiety. The point is to consolidate it, know where it comes from, and know how to steer it. And that's hopefully what the book will lead people with is, hey, yeah, some of the things I'm going to tell you are manipulative. That's human behavior, but manipulate is it's been taken out of context. People think if you manipulate behavior or you deceive that these are bad things. No, if the goal is a utilitarian outcome, one that helps all sides, that's not a bad thing in our context as a coach. It's a bad thing if you're doing something that, of course, is going to hurt the athlete's chances at being successful. But, while people have listened to this, they've probably manipulated the volume dials on their cell phone or their computer or whatever else. Like, manipulate just means to alter, right? So I guess you could say, in a sense, I'm trying to create more manipulative coaches so that they can better navigate the complexities of human interaction.
Yeah, that's great, mate. Like, I think you nailed it on the head there. And really, I think you're one of the coaches that are coming out right now and just sharing your beliefs and your thoughts, and you're really just pushing it as far as you can go. You're tripling down on it heavily. And then when you're looking at that, you found me out in like a little area. You just said, I can tell straight away what you are, what you're feeling, in terms of that plan. And I even looked at it myself. I said, if I've got a 10-year plan and I just have to get 1 second faster, it's still worth it. It's still worth it. Like, I'll still go all the way. And that's how hard I work for it. So, and that's where I think this is my next question is, how do you motivate all your athletes?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're all different, right? So I don't use one method. So that was kind of the point of the book. Again, you can't apply, reductionist thinking to human behavior and human interaction because they're all influenced minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, season to season by very different things. There's athletes that, I connected with early on in my career that, now we're kind of on divergent paths. They've kind of lost themselves a little bit, right, and lost that value set. There's athletes that at the beginning of my career, I was never enthused to work with. And now, we're able to work together a little bit more because we understand where one another's coming from. So I don't try to step too far out of my box. It's not like I talk about these things and want coaches to become radically different people. In the book, I talk about that. Some may connect a little bit more with, some coaches may relate a little bit more with a John Wooden or this softer kind of teacher-like, calm, relaxed approach, which is great. Others may, be a little bit more like Nick Saban or Bobby Knight, who, pardon the American examples, but are a little bit more intense and irascible. The point is not for somebody to be one or the other. The point is you motivate your athletes to use your terminology by being different versions of yourself and showing them the mirror of what they want to achieve most. So I think you motivate by showing athletes a mirror, and I'll explain what that means, instead of using muscle. I don't force tactics on people. I try to find out what matters to them most. I talk about how to do that in the book. I talk about the 3R method that I use. I talk about some other constructs that I use. And then everything that I talk about and every way that I communicate after that point is reflective of their goals, their values, their motivations, their drives, and all those pieces, right? So if you work with a guy at the NFL Combine, which isn't my particular area of passion, but I want to give a little bit different example, and Combine is so popular here in the States. And it's just a powerful example because these guys, their value set is very transparent right when they come. A lot of them talk about, get money or make it to the league or, be the best at this and that. But get money is like one of the most popular phrases because they've played sport their whole life. Now they want to sign a big contract. They want to make it to the show. And so every single thing is about, you say you want this, you say you want to achieve that, like you say you want to get the big money, we'll understand you've got to achieve these things. And I hate using money as a driver, but like that's what they respond to. For anybody else that's a pro athlete, and it doesn't matter if you're NFL, AFL, NRL, anything like that, people want to have long, productive careers. So my primary experience is working with veterans, people that are already professional athletes and want to stay in the game longer. It's easy. You simply address something that is a key anxiety producing piece for them. And that's not getting injured. That's staying healthy. That's being productive, right? So if you have an athlete that doesn't want to lift weights, it's pretty easy to be transparent with them and say, listen, I'm not saying that getting stronger is going to absolutely make all your dreams come true, but getting stronger is going to decrease your risk of injury. And that's plain and simple, right? You show them an exercise, maybe like a lateral lunge, and you help them understand how, it doesn't mimic cutting, because I'd never try to use specificity, but I try to say, you're going to cut and move at different angles. We've got to lift weights and strengthen the body at different angles. So I know you don't like this exercise, but what's the alternative? An increased risk of ACL tears, right? So there's simple examples, or sometimes just reminding them of their goals. Again, and some critics may say, well, I don't like to use fear as a motivator. Okay, I'm sorry. That's a part of how people respond. People don't want to get kicked out of their homes. They don't want to be, broke and homeless. They go find a job. People are motivated by fear. I'm not saying it's the sole motivation, and the examples that I gave are not all inclusive. But when you study human nature, right, we're very competitive. We're fear-driven. We're all trying to survive. Everybody is trying to survive. And whatever that means to them, right, you've got to tap into, and you've got to align your message with what survival means to them. And coaches have to just get over this politically correct, oh, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. You use what you can to get your athletes to understand the reality of this situation, right? And so I think you have to be honest, but I do think that you have to be flexible, and you have to use these traits. That's a key part of a presentation that I give right now, Brandon, called The Upside to Your Dark Side, where I talk about what the literature says about using these kinds of tactics, and they've looked at it in high-performance environments. They've interviewed the likes of guys like Sir Alex Ferguson, who was in charge of Manchester United, and he makes it very clear. He goes, listen, when you're in a room with 30 millionaires, none of them can step out of your control. So you have to understand the bright-sided characteristics of leadership that'll keep them in line, and the dark-sided characteristics, things that, are a little bit, outside the socially desirable behavior norms of what it means to be a great coach. And I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've even read through Sir Alex Ferguson and what he did in terms of how he kind of reshaped that club, and really how he just pretty much invested so heavily in the youth. And then he knew it's going to take time. He knew it was going to take time. And he had a 4-year contract, and it was almost at the end where he's going to get sacked. And that's when he started seeing the success, because he invested 4 years into that youth and built them up. And I think that's, for coaching, it's the same. You have to, go long term. You have to go long term. There's no short term wins. I think it's just that persistence. Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so pretty much, what's the next stage for you, Brett, in regards?
Yep, no question. In regards to what? Sorry, you cut out there.
Yes, sorry, mate. So what is the next step for you? So in regards to your future, your career?
Yeah, hopefully I'm in a position where I can determine that. It was my goal early on, after witnessing how strength and conditioning is in the United States. It is very, nobody's ever really in control of their own future. You can work in collegiate athletics and be a part of a great team for a while. And then all of a sudden, if your coach starts losing, you're fired, no matter how good you did. I've been a part of the private industry, which is great for some reasons. You get a little bit more flexibility. You get a wide variety of athletes you got to work with. But you can also get capped with your opportunities there. I like kind of existing in the space that I am now. I work with teams from a consulting standpoint. I'm able to be involved in the coaching industry by being able to go to clinics and conferences, and then I coach as well. So still work with my NFL guys, still work with military, still work with baseball, still work with a wide range of sports. Ian McEwen over at Port Adelaide is a great guy and is kind enough to send me some of his AFL blokes every now and then. My goal is to help strength and conditioning kind of evolve into the 21st century and be something where coaches can be a little bit more selective about the situations that they take, because I think a lot of coaches get pushed into jobs because of, fear, a job might not be paying them very well, or might, not provide ample opportunity, or it might even be a 1-year contract or 6-month contract, believe it or not. And I want coaches to understand that, we're only going to get opportunities that are commensurate with the value that we showcase. And unfortunately, in the past, a lot of times in the States, people have tried to show their value by just talking about the hours they work, how many hours they work. Our profession by and large still isn't taken seriously, because people still see us as weight room people. All the footage they see of us is us just screaming and yelling and doing this and lifting weights. Strength coaches are professionals. So my next step, in what I tried creating with the Bridge Human Performance, is I'm trying to change the way that strength and conditioning is viewed, so we all can have better opportunities going forward. So for me, I'm going to continue to work in both the team and private space. I think those things are what I'm passionate about. It allows me to reach the most coaches. Eventually, I want to open up my own facility. I have since I was 15 years old. I'm not ready to do that yet, but I'm a big community guy, so I'd love to just open up a small but nice facility where guys can come in, and it's not pristine. I want it to feel more like a boxing gym than I do a resort, because I think that's a big thing that drives athletes in the right way. I think right now we have this weird culture where athletes are able to go into these facilities that are so nice and so pristine, but then we're asking them to get down and dirty in terms of the output that they give us.
Yeah.
I don't think people need to be surrounded by comfort. I think people need to be surrounded by memories of what it takes to, or what it feels like to struggle. So I always tell people, if you walk into my gym someday, it's going to feel either like a barber shop or a rib joint, bottom line. Even if it didn't matter if I had investors that gave me $80 million, I would still want it to just feel like that. So eventually down the road, who knows, when I'm maybe 50 or 60, I'll do that. I have a lot of things I'm working on right now. The Bridge Human Performance, we've created this kind of network of coaches around the globe. Think of it as almost the Avengers. That's the joke we like to have. Not that we're trying to save anything, just we're talking about a team of people from different backgrounds. That's why we use that. Because daily, weekly, I'll get messages from coaches that, they want advice on training or coaching strategies, or, what should I do with my career? And it began to get a bit overwhelming, mainly because I still coach, speak, and travel, and I'm a husband. And I don't have all the answers, right? Like, that would be ludicrous to think that I'm this guy on some mountain answering all these questions. So what I've done is I've created a network of coaches that are interested in mentoring. And now, for a reasonable fee, people can connect with coaches all over the world and get advice on any topic, right? Whether it's speed development, whether it's mentoring, whether it's any of these pieces. And, that's another point I want to bring up, is coaches have to realize that in order for us to be taken seriously, we need to create more things like this, and we need to value our time. We have some people that, reach out, and they're more than happy to pay for our services. But every now and then, maybe 1 out of 100 will say, oh, I have to pay to get mentoring. Why is that? And it's like, I could have never imagined when I first started off in my career thinking that I was going to get knowledge for free and that knowledge would be valuable. The amount of times I took out loans sometimes to go to clinics and conferences, because free, anybody wants to get past a certain age understands that free advice is not good advice, right? They're going to give you very surface level things. And also it's not always sustainable. So in the past, I'd given everything away I did for free. And I'm a big believer if you can do that. But there comes a point where somebody says, hey, can I grab a couple hours of your time for coffee? And you may have to say no. And that person will think, oh, they didn't give me the time of day. It's like, no, it's not you. It's the fact that when you want to make a scalable change, like, you can't give 13 people that want to grab a cup of coffee all this time. Otherwise, none of us would get anything done. So I'm trying to scale mentoring and bring that back, because we have so many people that are hungry for real information, not just free blog articles. They're hungry for real information, and they want to connect with real people. And that does take an investment. It's taken an investment on my part to build it. It's taken an investment to get these coaches to give their time. So I guess to answer your question a little bit more consolidated, I'm trying to do my part to help the industry evolve, either through being more supportive and collaborative based instead of competitive, to help young coaches realize that, there's a lot of information that's out there right now, but to get the right information, or at least information that's going to be more than service level, you're going to have to invest. People don't owe you their time. People don't owe you anything. That comes from my own experience. I very rarely had people that would give me their time, even when I offered to pay for it, just because everybody had a secret. Everybody had a special formula that they didn't want to give up. I'm trying to be the opposite of that and create the bridge in that image. And then we have a follow-up course coming out to the book. So something I'm working on a lot right now, which is why I'm trying to, if anybody reaches out and I say, no, sorry, I can't talk, that's a big reason why. It's not personal. I just have trouble focusing. And so if I'm creating something, I have to really isolate myself a bit. But the course is going to be an extension of the book that's going to be available worldwide. It's really uncomfortable for me to do. I've never really been one to put out products, which is why most people probably haven't heard of me until I did the book. I'm a little bit reclusive from that standpoint. But whatever helps coaching, I just want strength and conditioning to be taken more seriously. I want coaches to feel like they have options. I want them to realize that we shouldn't be the only profession that can't create opportunities for ourselves. But for some reason, that's how it's been in the past.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. Like I honestly, I've done a lot of my time, I'm still doing my time, and I'm really just trying to learn and grow as a coach myself to give that back to my athletes and give that back to the sport and the industry that we both are in and I love. And I think that's where I'm trying to make a change in Australia at the moment, is just all those personal trainers out there that want to kind of get into sports science or get into those things and show them the benefits, show them what it's like. And because really at the moment in Australia, you've got maybe 100 kind of, sports science jobs in elite sport. And that's within, and that's it. And otherwise you just go private sector. And that's
right. Well, and see, think about what you just said there too. Like, unfortunately, that's a lot of times the view in the States. People think, when I travel internationally, people say, oh, why haven't you taken an NFL job? Why haven't you done? And there've been opportunities. There's been opportunities with NFL, Major League Baseball, things like that. But people forget that you can't just take a job because of an acronym. Like, it's got to be the right time. It's got to be the right fit. It's got to be the right organization. And for some reason, and I would have thought this too when I was in the team setting initially, people think that private sector is like second fiddle. I'll be dead honest. I love the team setting, and I'll probably go back to it at some point. Private sector made me the coach I am today. And this is what I mean. Like the team setting had its role as well. I mean, being a graduate assistant at a major university and being able to coach and program for 8 teams, no question, set the foundation, no question. But it wasn't until I went to the private sector and I had to work in absolute chaos. I mean, whether that was coaching in other countries, whether that was getting, 15 to 20 different athletes from different clubs, and me only having one intern, and me having to create more flexible periodization strategies because they all left at different times. They all came in at different times. That's why I laugh. Like, all these people that write these 12-week program for this and flexible periodization models for that. And it's like, you know what? Like, what? Nobody's working with an athlete where they don't change anything straight for 12 weeks. That does not happen. Yeah. Or on the other side, people say the private sector, they think it's personal training. That may be the case in some in some avenues. I work private sector, and plenty of people work with large groups of athletes, and it's not for 2 weeks. When I worked with Exos, they had a partnership with the NFL's player association where free agents could train for free. So you would have these athletes from anywhere from 6 to 12 months because they'd be trying to get picked up by a team. I still work with free agents that could be here so people need to quit looking at it's team or private sector and think private sector is below team. They both provide such great experiences. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but it's my opinion that in Australia, probably, private sector in the next 10 years is absolutely going to, I don't know if it's going to blow up, but it's really going to it's going to get bigger because because athletes want that. And that doesn't say in America, when private sector first started becoming a thing, team coaches got all up in arms because they thought these guys were competition. I never looked at myself as trying to be better. If a guy came from the, Cleveland Browns, it would never be my goal to be better than their strength coach. Like, I didn't know their strength coach, right? Like, so why would I try to compete with them? My goal is to simply send the players back so that strength coach was like, hell yeah, this guy's ready to roll. you're an assistant to them. But team coaches, team strength coaches got really threatened by private sector coaches here for a long time. And I'll give them, like, for some, that might be valid, because there's some private sector guys that are absolute idiots. Buddy Morris from the Arizona Cardinals called them, personal terrorists, because some of these guys would, of course, they try to do dumb stuff. They'd get out all these gimmicky, hokey things, but you could say the same thing about team coaches, right? There's some great ones, and there's some that are still using absolutely antiquated methods, but I'd never try to fit them all into a vacuum, right? And coaches that listen to this need to understand that no matter what path you go, don't worry about what people think of it. That shit doesn't fit into a vacuum. Do a great job where you're at. So, the reason I get so passionate about that is that was a huge point of contention here in the States for a long time. It was like team setting versus private sector,
Yeah.
and it's like, really? Like, yeah. I think we're all strength and conditioning coaches, right? Like,
yeah, we're still going into that stage right now, and I see a couple guys in Melbourne that are in the private sector that are really pushing the private sector, and I'm in it as well. So, and I love it. I actually love the private sector because you get to work with a lot of athletes that are younger and that are hungry and really just haven't got that opportunity to be in representative teams, and
yeah.
they're pushing for stuff, and that's encouraging that you're able to give back to all these young kids that when I was playing sport, especially, I never got the opportunity to do. And it's encouraging, I love it. And that's the thing that keeps me going, is just that ability to kind of go, well, I can help that kid and that kid and that kid, and just
right.
progress. So the one question I'll ask you is, so of all of your career now, is how did you effectively build up your social media presence?
Yeah, that was something that was really uncomfortable for me. I don't really like social media, to be honest with you. But I knew that it was going to be a necessary evil at one point. Really, to be concise with it, I started communicating things that I wish people would have told me, plain and simple. When I first saw social media and first got on, I dated a girl for a long time, almost got engaged, and her job was social media for an agriculture company. And this was before Instagram or anything like that. And I was just like, God, like, what are you doing? Like, what's Twitter? What's this? What's that? And then strength and conditioning in the States, that was really kind of no-no'd as well. Like, don't use it. And at the time I agreed with that. I was like, yeah, I don't really have a desire to. But later on, when you started seeing, okay, there's a lot of people putting dumb stuff out there, or you either realize you're part of the solution or part of the problem. So when I first started doing social media, my whole quote unquote thing was, there were a lot of people showing athletes doing all this crazy complex stuff. I wanted to show elite athletes doing really simple things. So I'd show, 8-year NFL veteran doing a really good RDL, or somebody working on cleans. And then I started to be just more transparent about it. So I didn't just show perfect reps. I showed the coaching process. And I was like, hey, here's so-and-so. You can notice they're struggling with X, Y, and Z. It's part of the process. Here's how you address it, whatever. And then I just started realizing that, there were so many coaches after a while now starting to do that. Like, almost everybody shares training footage. Everybody's showing cleans and front squats and this and that I had to evolve again. And that was around the same time that I was really getting interested in the human behavior piece. So that's what I started sharing then, is just some little insights about coaching tactics, techniques. I still don't try to get too deep into it because it's too easy for it to get taken out of context in social media, especially on Twitter. Twitter used to be my main vehicle, but now, Twitter is kind of an afterthought for me, to be honest, just because I think you're either on one of two ends of the spectrum. You either try to say something relatively complex, and then you get a bunch of people that are like, well, I don't get it. That's too broad, or you try to simplify things and people are like, well, that's reductionist. That's too, like, Twitter is just this angry hallway. It's become like, you can't win. You're too brief and you weren't specific enough. You say something bigger and people aren't happy with that either. And I don't think strength coaches know how to use it, to be honest with you. I think a lot of strength coaches are just using it to, like, stir up malcontent. Like, it's right now, right? Like, if you had a pretty solid following, you could get on and you could say something like, I think the 5-10-5 agility or pro agility test is absolute crap. Or I think the 5-0-5 is crap. And boom, all of a sudden it's going to blow up. Everybody's going to start this and that, especially if you're like a revered coach, right? Like somebody really well known just put something on Twitter about them not believing in a fixation on arm action when sprinting, and boom, just took off because he's viewed as this authority, and he is a great guy. He started going, and people don't realize they're just pawns, because now everybody's stirred up about this. And if you had dinner with the guy, you know, he'd be like, all I meant is you shouldn't like fixate on arm action. Like, yeah, it's important, but you shouldn't fixate. But like everybody now, I mean, it's got like 32 responses and people are losing their minds. But then again, if you put something helpful out there, like, right, like let's say you had a really big training breakthrough that day with one of your guys and you shared a coaching tactic that worked, some people will be like, yeah, cool, but you know, it didn't really move the needle and it didn't blow up.
Yeah.
And I hate that. So that's why I don't really do Twitter. I'm like, I'm not going to take my time to think of stuff that I think is helpful content and then just, you know, whatever. So I use Instagram now more than anything because you can give a strong visual, and we all know the power of visuals, right? Like it either fills in the hole that was left by what you can't explain verbally, right? So like you might have a short, tight caption at the bottom, and that could be interpreted many different ways, just like we were talking about with Twitter. But the picture helps bring that together as a whole, right? So I just try to share things that I think I wish people would have told me. I share things that are honest, in the moment. And I've learned, you know, that no matter what, you just got to accept the fact that if you share, people are going to think you're self-promoting. If you don't share, people are going to think you're hiding. So don't share for other people. You know, like put good content out, but don't worry every 5 seconds what somebody's going to think about it. Just share you. And that's what I found is if, you know, thankfully I must just have a lot of people that are, screwed up in the heads if they're supporting my work. But I'll say one thing, like I'm just transparent. There's nothing exciting about me. I tell it like it is. I call it how I see it. And thankfully there seems to be people that relate to that. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, no, I'm a biggest supporter.
But you still see it. Sorry, just to close that loop, you still see it. Like I might put something out and on a good day, I get like 400 likes, right? Somebody that posts something of a half-naked woman doing lunges is still going to get 80,000, right? And that's just the reality. Like, don't chase likes. Just put good value out there, and more people will flock to that.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, video now is coming. I think video is very important now. I think when people like watching content, they like watching, you know, if it's research, they like watching athletes get involved and do the basic foundation stuff that you were talking about. And, you know, especially for the future here, are you going to be doing any kind of projects in Australia coming soon?
Yeah, I'm going to be over in Australia from December 7th through the 10th. So on the 7th, I'm going to be in Sydney. Mm-hmm. Not any particular workshop. That's going to be the day that I'm not jet lagged. I'm going to be staying with David Joyce, who's a good friend. And then the 8th and 9th, I'm going to be doing an in-service with Port Adelaide with Ian McEwen and them. So I'm going to be spending some time with them and their club. And then on the 10th, a gentleman named James Russell was kind enough to have me out in Melbourne for a workshop. So I'll be doing a 1 day there. So James will probably have, you know, the details with that. I don't have his email handy, but if you're interested, I'm sure he'd love to have anybody over there. And then I usually try to come out there once a year. I mean, Australia is very much like a second home to me. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and that may not mean anything to some of your viewers, but Midwestern people in the States are about as close to Australians as it gets, just because you're no nonsense. You value people. You know, you're the type that will shake their hand and help them out. But if they disrespect you, you'll punch them square in the nose too. But you know, we're low key people that, you know, try to be salt of the earth, and that's how I view Australians. So I try to get over there as many times as I can. I just love everybody that I've met over there. And then, of course, the course will be coming out in next February. That'll be worldwide as well. So we're hoping to do more with that. So anytime I'm over there, please reach out. You know, I will say this: I don't always check my social media DMs. So if I don't respond, I'm not big timing anybody, or I don't think that you're not important. I probably just didn't see it. I'm really old school. So the best way to kind of get in contact with me is go through the website at Bridge, just like you would spell any normal bridge, like the Sydney Harbor Bridge. HP is in humanperformance.com. So if you go to bridgehp.com, that'll get filtered, and we'll be able to find that out. I've had to use some filters because I get a fair amount of people that reach out that say, hey, bro, why does my shoulder hurt? And I'm just like, I don't know what to do with you. Right? So I'm trying to institute, if anybody's listening, I'm trying to institute some tripwires so I can filter out the hey, bro people, and more of you that, want to like actually connect as opposed to, hey, bro, how can I increase my squat? Oh, all right. Nice talking to you. And then Instagram is the best way to keep up with that as well. If anybody's interested in the book, the best way to do it is just go to consciouscoachingbook.com. You'll get a free downloadable chapter, and there's no strings attached. You literally just enter your email, boom, free chapters in your inbox. That includes the foreword by Dan Paff. And that's the easiest way. And it is available in Australia. It's on Amazon. If you want a signed copy, there have been people that I don't ever think my signature is worth anything, but there's been people that have been really kind and asked for signed copies. We ship those to Australia. That's not a problem. Just go through the website and all that, and we'll touch base with you. Yeah, no, it's great, man. I got my copy on the way, so I'm very excited to obviously see that. So, especially I'll leave this on a high note now, and I'd like to thank you for everything you've done in this industry and really how you've kind of opened a lot of coaches' eyes. And I'm really excited for Australia to grow in the kind of S&C area and really start honing in on, like we said, building that private sector, really kind of networking worldwide and having that kind of bridge you're talking about, bridge the gap that you're talking about. And I'll link everything in the description box as well. So you'll be able to find Brett on his social medias followings, his coaching, his books. Definitely recommend buying it. I know a lot of people are excited to see this. So, and I'm glad that I'll be able to give it to you as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope to have you back on the soon. I hope to possibly be down in Melbourne and meet you down there. And then I can have a face-to-face handshake to you. Yeah, that'd be phenomenal. If there's one favor I can ask anybody that reads the book is if you could please leave an Amazon review. That feedback is invaluable, good, bad, or indifferent. And it really affects the way that Amazon treats the book as well. So it can give more flexibility to pricing for people across the globe, whatever. And then it just gives helpful feedback. So please take 2 to 3 minutes, leave an Amazon review. I really appreciate it. And congratulations on everything you're doing. I mean, you're a part of that as well. So people just have to remember, just like any other, I don't want to say industry, just like any other craft, it has to grow, right? Like coaches shouldn't feel like they have 1 or 2 options or they're stuck in a hole. So if you're somebody that's listening to this and you feel like you don't know how people will respond or react to you doing something, as long as you're building something that gives other people a helpful platform to help more athletes and more coaches, you can't go wrong, right? Just you got to focus on those things and have a clear-cut message. So thanks again, Brandon. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, mate.